Now, if you look at a lion and you look at someone throwing rocks, it still seems like a really big ask, right? To drive that thing away or kill it throwing rocks. And so, but Barbara Isaac was one of the first anthropologists to propose this hypothesis quite a while ago, went back and looked through the historical record, and these extraordinary stories of how effective people are throwing rocks. And so when the Portuguese went to the Canary Islands to try to subjugate it, they rock up with, armor, guns, crossbows, and this is in the 14 something, and all the locals were armed with was stones. And despite the fact that the Portuguese are there in army, trained, ready to shoot, and in their armor, they were just decimated by the locals throwing rocks at them. And this story has happened over and over again. And when you read these accounts, they're extraordinary. I can read you some examples from here. It happened in Australia, it happened in the Canary Islands, it happened elsewhere. They just throw rocks incredibly accurately, incredibly hard, and really fast. So, and there's, accounts in Africa basically killing a zebra with one blow of a rock to the head.
So like a pitcher, a major league pitcher, with
exactly.
a good rock,
right?
Who gets very accurate at it.
Yeah.
So do you think they must have practiced
constantly?
Yeah.
And so what I suspect is that we evolved to like to throw rocks. And so if you look at my son as for example, when he was 18 months old, we would be walking back toward the house. If he saw a rock on the street, he'd pick it up and start trying to throw it. And my wife would say, no, don't let him throw rocks. It's only going to cause trouble. First of all, I'm thinking, well, maybe he'll develop a good arm, so I'm going to go ahead and let him anyway. but secondly, he freaking wants to. This is like something inherently fun for him.
Right.
And I think all humans enjoy throwing. And it's stunning how good you can get it with practice. So we were at the Ohio State Fair. This was before my son was born. And I was walking by one of these stalls where you can throw in a radar gun. And so I thought, I was just started to date my wife, and I thought, here's a perfect chance to impress her, right? And how macho I am. So I said, hey, why don't I stop and I'll throw some balls here in this net? Because I had never thrown. I didn't know how fast I could. So she's like, sure. And I played like Little League, right? So I throw the ball, and it's like 50 miles an hour. And she's pretty impressed because that sounds fast, right? And then this kid shows up next to me. He's got to be 12 years old, probably weighs 85 pounds, this total gangle, not a muscle in his body. And he just starts freaking throwing ball after ball at 65 miles an hour. And I'm like, fuck. I mean, she's not going to be impressed when this human twig next to me is kicking my ass, right? And so I pick up the last ball. I freaking throw it as hard as I can. Hurts my shoulder, flies off at an odd angle, doesn't hit anything, and it's 57 miles an hour. Now, that little guy, who's literally the size of an Australopithecus, was throwing at 65 and hitting the target every time. And so it's obvious that it's skill, it's practice that would have made you good at this. And if your life depends on it, you're going to do it.
Well, that makes sense coming from a martial arts background, like coordinated movement, where at the end of it, you snap. It just makes sense that this technique is so critical. Even though you're a larger person, someone with better technique would have more of an impact with that. So the throwing arm, I had read this, that was one of the hypotheses. There's several hypotheses why the human brain doubled over a period of 2 million years. Another one was cooked meat, right?
Yeah.
They figured out a way to get more nutrients out of meat by cooking it over fire.
Right. So that's a little bit down the road. So here we are 3.5 million years ago. And so for the first time, we put some pressure on ourselves to have an advantage to be smarter. So imagine you're a zebra. What the hell good is it to you to be Einstein? You got hooves. What are you going to do with that brain, right? But it's a big cost. Our brains are 20% of our metabolic energy, whether we're doing math or watching TV. It's constant drain. And so what are our ancestors? Why would they pay for that drain? Now, just recently, there was a paper that came out maybe 3 months ago now on a new brain expansion gene they found, or they think that's what it is, called Notch2NL. And it turns out, 12, 15 million years ago, there was an accidental duplication of that gene on our genome. But it was ineffective, and it just sat there doing nothing. Now, that's a great way that evolution works, where it accidentally doubles a gene, because then you can mess with it, and the old gene's still doing the job, right? Mm-hmm. So it sat there for about 9 million years in our line, till about 3 million years ago, around Australopithecus, and then it duplicated itself, and it came online again. And what that gene seems to do is it makes our brain remain as stem cells for longer, which means a lot more duplication before they run away and start becoming neurons. And so if I had to guess, I'd say that that gene coming online probably happened many times in the past. And every time it happened in the past, it was more cost than it was worth. And so what's a chimp going to do with a little bit more brain and just means more calories, and what does he gain from it? But now that we're working together, now that we have collective action, all sorts of things open up. We could devise division of labor. I'll say, hey man, you do this and I'll do that. Because Australopithecus, they've got 70 more grams than a chimp. They can't do things like that. But they can't all throw rocks at the same time. That's not rocket science. But all the kinds of things that came next probably were enabled by that process of us coming together and deciding to work together and cooperate. So if you look at chimpanzees, they don't cooperate very well. For example, one of the activities where they sort of cooperate is when they hunt monkeys. And so they'll all gather around and they'll see some monkeys in the trees and they come in from every angle. It's not very coordinated. It's kind of a wild free-for-all. But what's interesting about it is that when the hunt's over, let's say you just sat there the whole time and watched, and I'm working my ass off chasing these monkeys. I got one. You come up and bug me for it. And I don't willingly handle it. You like keep nudging me till I share. But I'm just as likely to share with you if you helped as if you didn't. I don't make any distinction. And you'll never establish effective groups if you can't reward those who participate compared to those who don't. Even little kids, 4-year-old kids, when you give them games to play and they earn stickers, if you didn't play, you don't. When you come up and ask, you don't get any. You played, even if you didn't do your job right, but you tried, boom, you can have a sticker. So humans immediately get that you get rewarded for your activities as part of the group. Chimps don't seem to have that.
That's fascinating.
I remember when I was a kid, I was trying to learn to play baseball and pitch the ball, and the person raises their knee almost up to their nipples. And I'm like, that's the most awkward pitching motion I've ever seen. But it didn't occur to me, I'm not going to do that, right? It occurred to me, well, there must be a reason to do that. So what can I do to try to emulate that motion, right?
Right, to hold the ball like this and then...
The whole 9 yards. There's a purpose for every one of those pieces.
Right.
And as humans, we'll say, well, you're teaching me how. You've got to have a reason for doing that. And that's the huge difference between us and everybody else.
Right.
Nobody else can do that theory of mind thing to make that assumption. And that's why the chimps skip the step that they know, at least in that particular experiment, is really actually useless. And kids don't.
So your concept is that as these animals that used to be monkeys start evolving and trying out new things, one thing that they learn as they enter into this new climate is that there's a massive benefit to cooperation.
Yes.